Okay, so let me start off by clarifying some things before I really get into the meat of this video. Number one, however you feel about the truth of documentaries is all on you, but I'm of the belief that yes, most documentaries, if not a lot of them, are all PR safe speak. People want to keep their jobs, like I said before. You can't say anything bad at all, etc., etc. We live in a society... oh god, I've become a fucking meme. We live in a society where we are under a constant barrage of positive reinforcement. It's literally everywhere. Why do I say this? Simply look at Twitter. People will literally get fired and lose their jobs for saying some dumb shit on Twitter that the company doesn't agree with, or for their personal opinions. You should not get fired for your fucking personal opinions on the internet. It is absolutely ridiculous. People lose their jobs for saying the wrong thing, quote unquote, or if they go against the grain. That's the hill I'm dying on, guys. Like, people lose their jobs from saying stupid shit on the internet. You shouldn't get fired for saying dumb shit on the internet unless, you know, it's actual, literal, like, Nazi propaganda, Hitler was right. Shit like that. Reina and Baz, if you do watch this, can you confirm or deny, because you're under NDA, I understand, who you are working for? Whether you like Melanie Mack or not, according to this little video here, Saber Interactive is actually the ones working on the remasters for both Tomb Raider and the Legacy of Kain ones that are coming out, and probably anything else published by Aspyr. Aspyr is a publishing company, so why is Saber's name left out of all of the promo stuff and the key art end screens for these remasters in every single trailer? Why? Why is Saber being left out? Crystal Dynamics, love them or hate them, aren't giving me very much reason to really believe anything they want to say, especially if they are leaving out the actual developers of these works. So please, if you could, NDA or not, I mean, I guess because you're under NDA you couldn't, but if you aren't, can you say if you are working for Saber Interactive, Aspyr, Crystal Dynamics? Please, just some confirmation would be great. Number 2. Apparently only one of you on Reddit actually understood the gist of what I was trying to say, and some of you in the comments actually understood me. So, to put this very, very clearly, I should have said the word world building in quotes 100 billion times to get my point across. Obviously, Amy's work is very important, but when I say she didn't contribute much to the overall Legacy of Kain, I mean the world building. Again, that's on me, but I'm going to break it all down in this video later on, so please stick with me. Number 3. What thumbnail are you guys actually seeing for this video, and what thumbnail are you seeing for the other one? Here's the one that I'm seeing for the last video. Here's the one that I am probably going to put up as the default for this video. Here's all the other ones that I have for these videos, as well as future ones. YouTube has this new testing thumbnail thing, which I'm trying to use. I will admit that these two, 1 and 2, are actual literal clickbait. I will admit that. The algorithm likes that kind of thing for whatever reason, and the robots change the big trend depending almost daily. So who honestly knows? Comment please A, B, or C for what thumbnail you guys are seeing before sending me your hate comment. Please go like A dash insert your comment right here, and if I get enough of a certain letter while scrolling through all your comments, I'll just make that the default one. Apparently I can't see the actual results of this new testing phase for like 2 weeks. It's actually really stupid. Okay, so let's talk about Dennis and Blood Omen now. Blood Omen 1 was released in 1996 to positive sales, and naturally we all know it spawned a franchise. Depending on who you ask, the stories vary wildly on either side of the camp of how this game shaped out to be and the further things that happened. Legacy of Kain Wikipedia or not, the stories are still different, guys. Naturally, this video is before the no-clip documentary, so obviously we shall see what the vets have to say, and maybe some Silicon Knights people crossing fingers during this section if they cover it. I've said my piece on how I feel about 90% of documentaries, even from the ones that I like from no-clip. Amy came on board, according to the credits, as a design manager, helping to polish things up and get things out the door before they went over budget or went more over budget, depending on who you ask, of course. Depending on what side of the coin you want to pick for the credits say design manager. But Dyack has said in an interview I did with him, as well as just casual conversation, and that others also say that she came on board as an art lead designer. Maybe design manager falls under both of those categories. I don't know. I'm a programmer. I stick to programming things. So any designers out there, please let me know the differences or what other little subcategories there are in all of that. Soul Reaver would come out years later, 2 years later. Shifting to Shifter for a second, I will say that I was wrong. I can admit it. As a blind man, it's a bit hard for me to read, literally, and I had my dates wrong. Thanks to the Wiki and Avon for commenting this, the 2 years of dev time I thought Shifter underwent was incorrect. It was actual Soul Reaver dev time. That was those 2.5 years, not for Shifter. The Shifter concept stuff would shift literally and be merged into the overall lore of Legacy of Kain, and thus we got what we got. Credit where credit is due, naturally. Amy Hennig achieved something great in taking all the world building, which I would have said in my first video I should have, and grounded lore, and making her own spin on it and expanding on what is there. There's no denying that. Again, I'm not saying she's a hack, I'm not saying she didn't do anything, but it should be known, if it's not obvious already, that lots of the lore for the overall Legacy of Kain series is from Blood Omen, and the Soul Reaver trilogy cherry-picked what to focus on. Amy, as a writer, is a Hollywood writer. That's not a bad thing, but Hollywood writers have a very A, B, C plot structure. Setup, conflict, resolution. Dennis Dyack follows more of a Platonic, Heroditic, ancient Greek style, lots of writing, lots of background stuff, lots of tragic heroes, lots of world building. Two very different schools of thought. Dennis has said this in multiple interviews. The Serioli are the weapon masters and forge masters of Nosgoth. Did you forget they exist? I bet some of you did.
Iron Sword. Forged by the Serioli, the legendary weapon masters of Nosgoth, this blade will serve me well in life and beyond.
It's a name drop that simply adds flavor to the world that makes me want to know more. Are they typical blacksmiths that are just really good at what they do? Are they magical? Are they elves or dwarves or whatever the equivalent is within the Legacy of Kain universe? You guys get the idea. They were dropped and gone during the Soul Reaver era because it's a destroyed wasteland. We learn all of Kain's spells, which we didn't need to. They simply could have just said Mist Form, Lightning Bolt, and be done with it, but they kept going and gave us pepperings of little lore throughout the games that made what was at first a typical fantasy world with vampires and made it feel huge simply for all the little small world building details.
As it was born from hellfire, forged by the necromancer's magic, my armor resists fire and provides me with strong defense. Reputed to have been ripped from the chest of the greatest vampire to have ever existed, Janos Audron, the heart of darkness restores vampiric unlife. Life is precious, Janos discovered, as it was torn, throbbing and bleeding from his own body.
We get the entire Pillars lore from Blood Omen and how they operate. All the Guardians, naturally, the Gypsies, the simple townsfolk of Nosgoth, all the little villages around this kingdom, Willendorf, the Nemesis. You guys get the picture. Not to shameless plug, but I do have a podcast where I talked to Dennis Dyack a couple years ago. I do want to get Dyack in conversation again and go down this really long list of like every YouTuber ever who's made a video essay about Blood Omen's development and Legacy of Kain and that entire saga. Not just because it would be fun, but to finally set the record straight on things and get the actual words from the horse's mouth, if you know what I mean. As unbelievable as this would actually be, I would love to get Amy in an interview as well and get her side of the story from her mouth. No PR speak, none of that. Just full-on fun, like, bullshitting talking. I would love to get, like, just drunk with both of them and have a conversation. So to get into the lore that I've talked about in the last video and to sort of expand upon that again, I'll bullet point it and everything as well, I'm starting with the Hylden Vampire War because I think that's the biggest thing to take away from all of this, apart from, you know, the core Soul Reaver lore. So I've talked about this twice now, I'll link both these videos down below, but to say that Amy came up with this idea isn't true. She did expand upon it though, but I'll get to that in a second. The Hylden were a product of Blood Omen 2. That is a fact. You can consult the wiki and it'll tell you the exact same thing. Lots of stuff in Soul Reaver 2 and Defiance stems from Blood Omen 2. Because Glenn Schofield, yes, the Dead Space guy, was just too busy for whatever reason to call up Amy or whatever section the Soul Reaver crew was working in, and there you go. That's why the teams were separated. I guess just Glenn Schofield didn't give a shit. Stephen Ross was the art lead for Blood Omen 2, explaining the distinct look, but he was also the writer. It's in the credits. Sirens was a concept he was working on, and it started out as a prototype in the Quake engine as a kind of pitch before maybe it would have gone on to be something else. Whether it be an FPS game or not, doesn't matter. Needless to say, it was pitched. The base of it was pitched. Obviously, it was canceled. Obviously, he would go on to work for Blood Omen 2 and inject lots of those ideas because not only was he the lead artist because he gave it that distinct look, but because he was a writer. Spoilers follow here for what is going to be the Sirens talk of this conversation. If you do want to read them, they're all on Amazon, Comixology, Kindle, whatever. They're all $2 or something. There's 9 of them. It's a quick read. They're okay. The Hylden and the Ancients come from this canceled project, but in different forms. Years later, Steve released a comic book of the same name called Sirens. Now, whether you want to believe that he took the ideas from Soul Reaver 2 and Defiance stuff and used it for this comic, sort of bringing it around in a weird loop, I'm inclined to believe that because Sirens was an idea going all the way back to the 90s and even got set up as a pitch for the frickin' Quake engine and everything, this comic is literally just him getting it all out of his system. It even reads like a damn video game, like point blank almost. You can see the game design in this comic. So here's a section from that comic. There was a dream within a dream. In the beginning, there was just the mind alone in a vast and empty universe. The mind knew all there was to know, but it wanted more, and so it conceived of a plan. It would split part of itself into new minds and then send them into the stars so that one day they might bring back new thoughts and experiences. It split off parts of itself to create the people necessary to build these ships. Foremost among them were the 3 Ares, who were to oversee all aspects of life in the city and were given power over all of the other peoples. Many beings were created to accomplish this task, some simple laborers, others brilliant scientists, all content in their roles. In time, the ships were finished and sent out to the stars. Eons passed while the cities and its inhabitants waited for the first to return. Eventually, a ship came to the city carrying descendants of the original people sent out to the stars, and with it came a plague, a sickness called emotion. And that is how all this got so fucked up. Now, peppered throughout the rest of this series is small sprinklings of more lore that expands upon this little origin story. 2 ancient or futuristic races, I guess, all battling for control of this world. One is a pure naturalistic race literally made of light and stuff, while the other is a Geiger nightmare fuel monster bath. Both races go to war over differing views. You have one that's a fallen member of this ancient race of angels, basically, and is trapped in a gimp suit, and another that's the puppet master behind it all. Does that sound familiar to you at all? Swap the Sirens with the Ancients. Swap the demons, that's what they're called in Sirens, with the Hylden. Swap Darth Gimpsuit over here with the Seraphan Lord, and swap the actual leader with the Hylden King, or whatever the hell was supposed to show up in Dark Prophecy. It's all there in Sirens. Really quick side note, Blood Omen 2 has the Seraphan Lord. Defiance ends with Janos getting possessed by the Seraphan Lord, who then takes over his body. We get the whole Blood Omen 2 thing. Kain then kills him and takes his soul and destroys and banishes the Hylden dimension, and it all comes full circle. So my little question here for you lore experts who probably know a little bit more than me is that, is the Seraphan Lord, the one that possesses Janos, and the Hylden King or Lord, the one that was supposed to show up in Dark Prophecy, the same person because it's all a weird loop or something, or is it 2 separate people? Serious question. Needless to say, how did Amy overcome this huge hurdle of having like 0 communication with the Blood Omen 2 team, this crazy fucking story, and making it all work? Simple. She put it into Soul Reaver 2 and Defiance. The Elder God is the cause of the war. The vampires are religious nuts who start the war, where in Sirens it's the demons because they've morphed by 1,000 years of experimentation and discovered what emotions are. The Hylden are the techno-demons from Sirens, but they are made more sympathetic here in Legacy of Kain and stuff because they simply didn't want to follow the rules of the crazy religious zealot vampires while trying to coexist. Amy does what she does best and took these building blocks and fleshed them out, even though it wasn't really her ideas in the beginning, but she sure as hell made them her ideas by the end. The pillars being a giant magical padlock is obviously a new take on whatever the original Blood Omen version would have been later on down the line. Duh. Again, taking the world building already set there and adding her own little twist and kind of making it her own. Raziel, the clans, the post-apocalypse, all Amy. Duh. As I said before, she took this world, spun it around, and created something new out of all of it. We even got more of an expansion on the Soul Reaver world with Nosgoth, probably one of my favorite games of the entire series, Nosgoth, the freaking multiplayer one, in which Daniel Kabuko, the art lead of the trilogy, gave input on the clans for that game. If I'm not mistaken, again, someone correct me if I'm wrong, please. If I'm not mistaken, Daniel Kabuko and Amy sort of back and forth, and Dan came up with a lot of the cool backstories that are probably in a giant game design bible for the clans during Soul Reaver 1, simply to have motivation for why they exist. Duma's clan being weapon masters, samurai or something, Tyrell being super blacksmiths, Zephon being spies, Rahab being like the super SWAT team members or something. All that shows up in Nosgoth, the online game, for the clan backstories, which Daniel Kabuko contributed to. So I think, if I'm not mistaken again, that all of those ideas are simply from the Soul Reaver design bible, which him and Amy probably back and forth a lot on. Kain as a character was changed as well and expanded upon naturally because it has to be. If there's one thing Amy is great at, it's emulating things. She emulated the Shakespearean style and melodrama perfectly, and it follows seamlessly across Blood Omen and Soul Reaver, respectively, from Dennis to Amy. Like I said, it's already there. I think she managed to tell all these ideas, throw them in a pot, and make it work while being under tremendous crunch pressure and still turning out great games. Without Blood Omen, we wouldn't have Legacy of Kain. It would be Shifter something or other, and whatever Dennis was going to do of Kain, right? It's true, Amy made Legacy of Kain what it is today, legal battle notwithstanding. She tamed the literal monster that was developing these games and gave us classics. Hell, Soul Reaver was my first entry because Blood Omen's cover art was too violent, and my parents told me no when I decided to hand them the giant big box of the PC version in their face. Look at that cover. I mean, come on, would your parents tell you yes? And now we are getting remasters, which is awesome, and I think we can all agree on that. So if we line everything up and mix it together, it becomes this blending of this and that to create this world that we all love. The true god, really, of Legacy of Kain is both Dennis and Amy. And I think any fans who attribute, it's purely this, it's purely that, oh, this one's better, oh, that one's better, need to, sort of take a step back and look at the series as a whole. We have all the tremendous lore and world building that was set down by Blood Omen, which a lot of us know, and then we have the expanded sort of universe, if you want to look at it that way, of Soul Reaver and a sort of alternate timeline. It's weird that a series like Legacy of Kain, dealing with all this timey-wimey timeline travel stuff, is in itself part of a weird what-if scenario. On one hand, we have what Dennis Dyack would have done for Blood Omen and Legacy of Kain going onward, which we may or may not see in Deadhouse Sonata, his upcoming project. And on the other hand, we have that split timeline, literally, of Soul Reaver and what Amy had done. They are both together the creators of Legacy of Kain, in my opinion. So, no, Amy Hennig didn't do nothing. She did a hell of a lot. She did a lot. She is great, but when it does come to the world building, a lot of that really was in Blood Omen, and she managed to take it all, meld it together, and do this awesome thing. So, I had a cooler send-off, I think, but I completely forgot it all. With all of that said, please keep it civil in the comments, and I will see you all in the next one, probably for the review.
Did you say that out loud in an interview once? That it was your greatest achievement?
I could have said anything out loud in an interview. No, I think somebody asked me...
to pick one? I hate that question, by the way. So I did not ask that question. Pick one of your games. What's your favorite? But is it Legacy of Kain?
Legacy of Kain. So I said that I thought Soul Reaver was probably the purest design experience that I would hold up. And it was a lot of firsts for me. It was the first PlayStation game I made, the first 3D game I made, the first game that I actually wrote for and worked with the actors on. First game that we did streaming off the disc to have seamlessly loading. So it was crazy pants. I mean, we tried to do way too much with that game than we really had time for.
Crazy Pants, the original name for the game was Crazy Pants.
Yeah, it didn't test well.
That started that streaming thing that would later go on
Well, interestingly, Crash Bandicoot, the Naughty Dog was doing this with Crash Bandicoot at the same
Why do you
time.
get Crash Bandicoot in the audience right after?
Yes, I know, it's really weird. You should turn around. It's right there. And it was sort of coincidental, I think, that, you know, we all kind of clicked onto this idea at the same time, that if we could figure out how to seamlessly load off the disc, then we would have a much more immersive experience for the player. But it was really damn hard. Like, I think it was literally about 2 months until we were supposed to be finished with that game. We still, like, the textures wouldn't pack right. We were like, what did we do? Why did we do this? And then finally it just worked and we shipped it.
And every level in that game, you had to load like 2 worlds all the time.
Yeah.
Memory, that's right? That couldn't be easy.
Yes, sort of. If A, B, and C. If you're in B, A has to be loaded, C has to be loaded, then you dump it. You know, easy stuff.
What can we possibly say about Uncharted that hasn't been?